I got someone
Can
sitting
you
here.
all hear me?
Okay, can I have
Hears pretty well here.
great.
I'm going to be standing here at the podium because I have some wonderful slides to show, so I hope you don't mind that. And we're going to dim the lights, which I know will be dangerous, so I'm careful. Well, first, welcome to St. Child's. Thanks for joining us for the exhibition and for the opening. I'd like to take a moment just to personally thank a few people who put together this exhibition. And I want to begin with Jill, W2. And she's way out there. She probably can't hear me, but when she comes back to the room, I'll turn her over. And then Brian Jose, who is the head of fine arts programming here at St. John's and St. Beth. Originally, we were just going to do an exhibit of some St. John's paintings, and then we realized that we had more room, and so it went from being a collection of St. John's to a much broader collection, thanks to Brian. And then Teresa Nelson is the student worker who worked on this, did a fabulous job. And there's Jill, by the way. Let's do that. There's a couple seats right here, Adam and Susan, if you want to front row seats. And there's a few more up here. What I'd like to speak to tonight is really three things. The first is the theme of the exhibit. The second is the artist. And the third is the artwork. And tell a little story along the way. But first, just a couple of preliminary comments. First, if you haven't already figured it out, the artist is my father. He used his formal name, Robert E. Culligan, in his art career and when he signed his paintings. But he's commonly known to us as Bob. Second, this exhibition is dedicated to Bob's wife, Nancy, my mom, and his four siblings, John, David, Molly, Joe, and Margie. And I want to say a special honor to my Uncle Joe. He passed away yesterday. He was hoping to be at this show. I know he's here with us in spirit. And I was able to send a PowerPoint with this to him the other day, and my cousin showed it to me. Absolutely. So he had a chance to see, hopefully to see here tonight. So the theme. The title is A Sense of Place, and I kind of informally nicknamed it Places My Dad Lived and Loved. For those of you who are familiar with St. John's, you'll recognize this title, and it's from a book. There we go. Hold on a second. There we are. I'm in a slide or two. Here's the siblings that I just mentioned. Many of them are here tonight. Hey, if you're in the Culligan clan, just raise your hand. We got a bunch of Culligans. Possible because many of them loan paintings, so it can be part of the exhibit. So the theme comes from this book, A Sense of Place, which came out in 1987, and it was edited by Father Colin Berry and by Dean Bob Spade. It was very popular, and as an aside, it was so popular that a few years later, the University of Notre Dame came out with a book of its own with the same title. And I think we should be claiming the royalties. I don't think Notre Dame would miss it. Many of you are familiar with Sister Coleman, the former president of St. Beth. Sister Coleman is here. Sister Coleman likes the kid that St. John's has a sense of place, but St. Ben's is a place of sense. At least I hope she was kidding. In the introduction to A Sense of Place, Father Hilary Timmis, who at that time was the president of St. John's, and I know Father Hilary was at the exhibit. Is he in the room here? Okay, he must have left. But he talks about how the Benedictine monks and sisters are committed to forming stable relationships within community. And at the heart of Benedictine life is a vow of stability, a commitment to place, and a commitment to community. He goes on to say, and a portion of this is in the title wall, It has something to do with a settled way of life and with the awareness of local history that links successive generations living under the same roof and walking the same paths. A sense of place depends most of all on shared history. A transient population does not sink roots in a place. Now, it might seem a little odd that a book that touts a settled way of life and that revivals the transitory population would be chosen as the theme of an art exhibit about a man who traveled the world over. But bear with me for a moment, and this is all going to make sense. Bob Culligan was a bit of a journeyman. He was born in St. Paul, went to college in Indiana, lived in Chicago, Milan, Italy, Brussels, Belgium, and traveled around the country and the world for his work. So a physical location is the sole determinant of rootedness to a place. Then I guess you would call my dad a transient or a nomad. If, however, you examine my dad's life more closely, you'll find that he had a deep awareness, love, appreciation for the places he lived. And his art served as a means to connect and anchor him closely, deeply, and genuinely to each place that he settled. His paintings capture the beauty, the spirit, the soul of each subject. And in this way, he provides a model to many of us in this highly mobile global world, such as our students here at St. John's and St. Ben's, who travel internationally, a model for seeking and achieving an authentic sense of place, so that we become true members of the community, rather than globetrotters or interlopers. Getting to know the people, visiting and exploring the nooks and crannies of the country, learning the local language, immersing yourself in the culture, understanding the history, becoming one with people and places where you live. That is the true mark of global citizenship. That's how you really develop and cultivate a sense of community and a sense of place. When we moved to Italy in 1969, we learned very early on that we were neither strangers nor tourists. This was our home. We belonged. Bob Culligan's life helps us broaden our understanding and definition of sense of place. It is not just about where we live and for what duration. It's about how we live and how we conscientiously and deliberately set down roots. So that's the theme, the sense of place. Now a bit about the artist. My dad went off to college at the University of Notre Dame to follow the footsteps of his father and his brother to become a doctor. But he emerged a fine arts major. He didn't pursue a career as an artist. He ended up working for 3M for 33 years. But he used his art skills throughout his career, first in advertising, then in graphic design, and finally in corporate image and branding. His last assignment was to serve on a team that transformed those blue block 3M letters into the more modern, vibrant red letters that rounded 3M. And here's a picture of my dad going up in a hot air balloon when they were doing the launch of the new 3M corporate identity. When I was a young boy in the 1960s, I don't recall my dad painting. Maybe I was just simply too young to remember, but I suspect that he was just very busy getting started in his career, and he and my mom were raising 6 kids. So I don't think he had a lot of time to paint. And I can count on one hand the number of paintings that I remember from that era, or pieces of artwork. He had this plaster hand that he did. And then he had a still life that he painted. It was oil painting, because he worked in oils in the 60s. And it was of an alabaster bowl with birds. And then yesterday, my sister Mary reminded me he did another oil painting, and it was of her as a young baby. And again in oil, and Mary and I decided for the purposes of tonight, we would call it La Bambina Nuda. So, that was it more or less, although she also reminded me that my dad went to Uncle John's house he probably asked permission. I think he just did it. And then he also painted a mural on our house right before we moved to Europe. And I think that was after a few glasses of wine. So it was his parting way of saying goodbye to St. Paul. But things changed dramatically in 1969 when we transferred to Italy. There my dad began painting almost every weekend. And I would often sit at his side silently for hours at a time watching him paint. My main job was to ooh and ah. He needed positive reinforcement. But he also would ask my opinion, which I think was surprising. I knew nothing about what he was painting, but he'd say, do you like it? What do you think? And he'd wait to see what I had to say about it. And even though I never learned to paint myself, I credit my dad with instilling within me an appreciation for art and beauty at a very young age. My dad rarely talked about his art and what it meant to him. He preferred to let his art speak for itself. Later in life, I introduced him to the works of Brother Thomas Bezanza, a Benedictine potter in Erie, Pennsylvania. And my dad loved his work, but even more, he loved his writings about art, particularly from this book called The Path to the Beautiful. And in that book, there's a reflection from Brother Thomas that begins, "It is said that artists are the last people to ask about their work. That is true because the artist speaks through his work." I think that sums it up for my dad. He spoke through his art. Although there were a couple instances that he did some writings about his art, and I want to share those with you. In this first instance, he wrote that painting is an introspective process. It goes on later to say, "I strive for simplicity at the expense of technique." He also says, "My life later drifted towards impressionism over time." The second example is from a letter that he wrote to my sister Mary, giving her some advice when she was getting established in writing. And this is what he had to say to her. And he talks about how his best work is created from direct experience. And he ends by saying, ultimately, art is a solitary endeavor. Now, I think my dad enjoyed and appreciated that alone time to paint. This thing seems sort of frozen up on me. Bear with me. I got a bit of a malfunction here. Oh. Go back. All right. But even though he'd paint alone, he liked to have an audience. A lot of times he'd paint in the living room so we could all watch him. And occasionally he'd paint in public. So here he is. I suspect that could be Lake Superior. I'm not entirely sure. But any chance he got, my dad would paint. On weekends, on holidays, on trips. From 1970 onward, my dad painted mostly in watercolor. But occasionally he would do pen and inks. And you'll see in the exhibit there's some pen and inks of Noble Italy that he had done. Most of the time my dad painted landscapes. Here are the pen and inks, by the way. Most of the time he painted landscapes, and that's the focus of this exhibition. But he also went through phases of subject matters where he did still lifes, abstracts, nudes, florals, and koi. And he was prone to experimentation. One time he was doing some drawings when we lived in Belgium, and he accidentally spilled coffee on his watercolor can, and he just freaked out. And he ran off and got a towel, and he starts trying to wipe it up, and he just smeared it all over the canvas. And then he was even more frustrated. Yeah. Well, when he got settled down, and he kind of looked back and said, I kind of like that. So he went through a phase where he started painting with coffee. Well, this is a painting from Margie's, and I suspect the brown hues there are from coffee. Now, he stopped painting from coffee because along the way he started putting sugar in his coffee. And he was painting with that coffee, and some of these paintings came out and they were all shiny and everything, and so he either had to give up sugar or he had to stop painting coffee. So, when my dad retired in 1988 from 3M. He devoted the remaining years of his life painting as a hobby. He joined the studio, Old Town Artists in St. Paul. And it's one of the oldest professional arts associations in Minnesota. Later on, he opened up his own studio in St. Paul, right across from Union Depot. And he continued to participate every year in the Arts Program in St. Paul. My dad was a prolific painter. My guess he painted 600, 700 paintings. Hard to tell. We don't have a full inventory. He sold a lot. He gave a lot away. This exhibit allowed him to come back, and people call me and email me, and they have paintings we never even knew about. But it's been wonderful to reconnect with people that way through this exhibition. I think the thing that makes my dad such an accomplished artist is that, and this is shared with other artists, he had a great eye for beauty. And he also saw beauty in all things. And he was also very observant. And then he would want to create that beauty. And I think that's what inspired him to paint throughout his life. Okay, the last thing is artwork. This exhibition consists of about 50 paintings and some drawings from Culligan. The exhibition tells a story, and it's a story that chronicles his life. And for the most part, the paintings and the story are in chronological order. It begins with our family origins in County Clare, Ireland. I never knew that my dad did any paintings of Ireland. And I was at my cousin Johnny's looking at some paintings for this exhibit. And he says, well, let me show you this one. And lo and behold, it's a painting of Ireland. I said, oh, I never knew that. I said, I think this is the only one. 3 weeks later, I was at my sister's house. Lo and behold, she had a painting of Ireland. I need my words. But that's where the painting begins, the family origins in Ireland. The next painting is, and I can show you all the paintings, but I'm just doing the highlights. Boyhood Moments on the other. There's actually 2 of these. It's where my grandfather lived. It's where my dad grew up. This is where my dad went to high school. It was in a different location at St. Thomas Academy. He went, as I mentioned, to the University of Notre Dame. My dad was a huge Notre Dame fan. There's also a set of paintings, of course, from this hometown of St. Paul. Many of them are churches, such as the Cathedral, the Assumption, and St. Luke's. This is actually called St. Thomas More now, but to my dad it was all St. Luke's. And one other that he did, one of my favorites, is of a different worship space, which is my dad loved to paint boats, and there's only 2 in this exhibit, but we could do a whole exhibition of boats that my dad painted. This one belongs to me, and I'm often asked, what's your favorite painting of your dad's? And I'd have to say that this is probably in my top 5. And I'll get back to my favorite one. There's also a collection of paintings from Italy, both of Milan, where we lived for 4 years, and the Italian Riviera, where we had the great fortune to spend some summer vacations. My dad loved Portofino, but I think his favorite subject matter was the sea village of Culligan. And this is in the show, of course. And I'm going to say a little more about this painting in a few moments. We also lived in Brussels, Belgium for 5 years, which is the home of the Grand Place and the famous mannequin Pete. And our home where we lived was in a small town outside of Brussels. It was called Jezus-Site. Here's a painting of a nearby chapel of Notre Dame du Bois, which would be the French for Jezus-Site. Lastly, the exhibit includes paintings from 2 of my dad's favorite places that he would visit, Rockport, Massachusetts, with the famous fishing pier, motif number 1. Rockport was the home of his college roommate and best friend, Bob McGillian, and he would go there frequently. The other location that's featured here is Augusta National Golf Club, home of the Masters. And the day I figured out my dad was having memory issues. We were watching the Masters, and he got confused with the scoring system. pars, bogeys, eagles. I think he had played golf all his life. I knew something was wrong watching the Masters. I almost forgot, St. John's and St. Thomas. So, as some of you know, from about 1999 to 2008, my dad painted one watercolor each year at St. John's. And I would turn them into Christmas cards and share them with alumni and take all the credit. My favorite St. John's painting that he did is a stone artist job. It's an iconic image of the St. John's campus. My least favorite of the one he did was the one, the bell banner from the Arboretum. Now you're probably wondering, why would I show you a picture of my least favorite painting of St. John's, let alone included in the exhibition? Well, there's a real good reason. So in 1997, my dad was diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's. And his neurologist encouraged him to remain active and to keep painting, which he was able to do for several years. And the last painting he did at St. John's was this one. When he was painting it, he struggled mightily. And he was having trouble, particularly with his tree. But you can also see the bell banner is not level. Okay, so but he was painting and he was getting all kinds of help. And he probably would have given up on this one. But my sister came and made sure he got it done. And I think that is a tribute to his steadfastness, his determination. He wanted to get it done. And so it's a painting that I have mixed emotions about. Now I'd like to end with one last painting. It's one you've seen before. I showed it, Culligan. Interesting enough, my dad painted this particular watercolor in 2003, which was about 30 years after we left Italy. And I remember my dad telling me that he enjoyed living in Italy more than any place else. Absolutely loved it. And he wanted to go back. He wanted to go do it. And I think this painting was his way of going back to Italy. Now, my dad rarely named his paintings, but when we were putting together the exhibit, I looked at the back of this frame, and I saw that he put a label on it that read, Colori di Liguria, which means the color of Liguria. Now, Liguria is on the Mediterranean, coastal region between Genoa, Cinque Terre, all the way over to Noli. And my dad entered this painting in the State Fair in 2003, and it won honorable mention. It's just a beautiful work. But there are other reasons why I want to show this painting to you, besides the fact that it was his favorite spot and it won an art award. When my dad started losing his memory, he was able to extend his ability to paint by a few months by copying watercolors that he had previously done. And at the time, I wasn't aware that he was doing this, but I learned about it later on when I came across this particular watercolor. And it's on a small canvas, and it's over here on the podium. And when we're done and the lights come back on, I invite you to come over and take a look at it. Now, this painting is remarkable and significant in many respects. First, here's the original painting of Culligan. And here's the replica, the one he painted when he had dementia. So let me show you them together. As you can see, it's almost a perfect replica. His attention to detail was amazing. Most of us would be hard-pressed to be this precise, even with our memories intact.
Yes.
The other reason it's significant is, to my knowledge, it's the last painting that my dad ever worked on. And lastly, this painting was never completed. If you look carefully, you'll see these buoys were never completed. This basket or rope wasn't completed. The people up here in the cafe aren't there. So it was partially done. And for me, the painting is symbolic of my dad's life in two respects. First, it represents his burning need and desire to paint, right to the very end, against all odds and obstacles. For him, it was like breathing. One of the saddest days for all of us in this long, painful journey called Alzheimer's was the day he woke up and he said, I don't remember how to paint. So, just a devastating day. And second, like this painting, my dad's life was cut short. It was incomplete and unfinished. But even in its incompleteness, there is tremendous beauty, wholeness, and grace in this painting and in my dad's life. And so for all these reasons, of all my dad's paintings, this is the one I cherish the most. Well, I'm sorry. You've been a great audience. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. One or two questions, and I know we want to get you back to the gallery. If you want to have a question about his artwork, a comment, Jill.
Did you ever take a art class or try to teach yourself?
No, I did not. But my brother Mike once did a painting, and my dad saw it, and he always wanted two things. My dad wanted. He wanted one of us, well, three. He wanted one of us to be a priest. That didn't happen. He wanted one of us who was, I'm trying to think what else he wanted. A doctor. There we go. Thank you. Wanted one of us to be a doctor. That didn't happen. The third thing is hoping one of us would start painting. So my brother Mike did a painting. And he showed it to him, and he's like, my dad's like, oh God, that's just fantastic. Here's what I want. No, I got that one. There's my painting, my dad's good buddy. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mark.
Thank you.
You might still confirm this or not, but I think the reason Bob changed the three of them from the skies and waters blue to red is that blue did not show up on a fax machine. That had been invented until it was out and fax was in. I'm not sure. Mike might know that.
What was that? Well, I didn't. What was that?
The 3M logo,
Why
why
they-
they changed it from blue to red.
She didn't show up on the fax machine.
I think it's because
I really didn't hear. I know that. Yeah.
Any other comments? Well, again, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
What a Father's Day gift. Yep, that was a great Father's Day gift.